This is Just in Case of American Newscape. Joining us today, Dr. Jane Orient. Dr. Orient is going to enlighten us on the ramifications of racing to vaccinate in today's COVID-19 world. Hello, Dr. Orient. Welcome to American Newscape.
Hello, Justin.
Getting right to it, Dr. Orient, would you please help us understand the need to race to vaccinate?
I think people are in a great hurry to vaccinate because they're constantly being told that they can't go back to work, they can't go back to any kind of normal living, they can't go on a trip or to a ball game until we have a vaccine. And so they think, well, if we're to get out of our little house arrest, we have to get a vaccine. And that's because the powers that be are telling us that.
So there is no shortcut for vaccine development, or is there a shortcut for vaccine development?
The vaccine seems to have appeared at incredible speed, that almost immediately after the sequence of the virus was announced, people went to work with all their fantastic, awesome, modern biotechnology to develop a vaccine. I'm told that there are a number of vaccines. But the thing that you really can't hurry up is testing for safety. You have to have animal testing, and you have to have people receiving the vaccine, and it takes quite a long time to see whether there are going to be any serious adverse consequences. If you only follow 100 people for a few days or weeks, you're probably not going to see some very serious long-term consequences that won't show up for months and might appear only in 1 of 1,000 people or 1 in 10,000 people, and you only tested 100.
Wow. What type of consequences and side effects have we seen in the past from these types of developments?
We've seen death. We've seen Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a kind of paralysis that also paralyzes your respiratory muscles, so that if you don't have mechanical ventilation, you die. And you may or may not recover fully or almost fully so that you can walk around and live normally afterwards. You may be in the hospital for a long time. This was one of the consequences of the rush to develop the swine flu vaccine. I think that was back in 1976.
Okay. Well, not only the testing and the safety of the vaccine, but there's also going to be production and distribution issues, correct?
Well, of course, you have to rev up production. Often that has taken months to years using the old technology. Well, we've got some new technology, and there is even this proposal. We're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars building factories and maybe even making the vaccine before we even test it. And supposing it proves to be unsafe or ineffective, we're just going to throw it all out, just waste our huge investment. I think there'll be a little bit of incentive to make sure that the tests turn out the way you want them to.
Does it make any sense why there's a race to do this? They're in a hurry to do this. Is there any logic behind that?
I think if you're planning to make a killing from the vaccine and that you are just dedicated to vaccinating the whole earth like Bill Gates seems to be, he wants to vaccinate nearly every person on earth, all 7 billion of them. But if this is an epidemic that's stopped by a vaccine, it will be the first epidemic in history that has ever been stopped by a vaccine. All epidemics, including those that have been far, far worse than what we're having now, eventually stopped. You know, the Black Plague, the 1918 Spanish flu, the 1958 Asian flu, the 1968 Hong Kong flu, and the current pandemic is dying down.
I remember my grandparents when I was small telling me about the Spanish flu. And they were teenagers at the time, but they remembered it. I mean, they were frightened by it back then. They were in the Midwest. It's almost it's almost like fear and paranoia is rampant today. And we almost feel responsible in the media for fueling those fires. And that's about the money. So if the media is fueling these fires, chasing the bugs, and the vaccine companies are recklessly pushing this forward, it's almost like the common theme of this is it's all about the money at our expense.
It sure looks like that. I mean, that would be one motivation. But I think another is a political agenda. There are people who possibly do want a global kind of governance. There are people who just want to get the current administration out of power, or who simply want to aggrandize the power that they have. And these governors are grasping all types of powers that would have been unimaginable before all this started. So there are all kinds of nefarious motives to keep this epidemic going, no matter how many people's lives are ruined.
Wow, yeah, and that should be in the back of everybody's mind. In fact, even if we could go back today, if the government were not stopping us, we could go back. You know, it's as if they're putting up roadblocks.
Well, they are. And I think one big barrier is going to be that people are genuinely frightened to death. And we found out that we have a large number of people who, just like the East Germans reporting on their neighbors, the Stasi, are willing to phone up the snitch lines if they see somebody doing something like taking a walk or being with their child in a park or not wearing a mask. So and they think that they are threatened by these people, or there are people who feel that even if they don't get sick, they might give the disease to somebody else. So they're already feeling this guilt, and all this has been inculcated in them. It's going to be hard to overcome that, but there are a number of people who are really tired of this and who really think that it's all overblown and who will go back to work and to normal life, but they have all of these mayors and governors standing in their way.
Well, and the people you speak of are medical people.
Some of them are medical people, yeah. A lot of medical people are vastly overreacting to this, and they're fueling their patients' anxiety. And they're afraid themselves, not necessarily of the virus, but of the medical board. For example, if they were to prescribe something the medical board disapproves of, like hydroxychloroquine, or high doses of vitamin D, or vitamin C, they could lose their medical license.
Wow. What when you talk about high doses, what type of doses of vitamin D and vitamin C are we talking about?
A lot of doctors are recommending 5,000 international units of vitamin D a day, enough to get your level up to being sufficient. And most Americans are vitamin D deficient, even if they live in the Sun Belt. They just don't get enough sunlight, or they wear sunscreen. And intravenous vitamin C, well, in China, they're testing doses as large as 25 grams a day intravenously.
Wow.
There's a lot of medical history of people who've been given doses of up to 100 grams at once if they didn't respond. People have been really saved from nearly certain death from adult respiratory distress syndrome by giving vitamin D. And even after the patient came back from death, the doctors were trying to prevent the family from having him given more.
Well, my endocrinologist, my Mayo endocrinologist, has me taking 2,000 units of vitamin D daily prior to COVID-19 ever coming out. And I live in the Sun Belt. I don't get much sun, but certainly I have a deficiency for it.
Well, I think you should get your levels checked. I mean, you can't. It is possible to take too much vitamin D, but you have to take an awful lot for a long time to do that.
Wow. We had heard rumors that there was something from the FDA, or the FDA was throwing up roadblocks.
Oh, yes, the FDA put out this emergency use authorization. At first we thought, oh, that's terrific. Now doctors will be able to use this. Chloroquine for 65 years at least It's been used by hundreds of millions of people to prevent malaria, and a lot of people now are treated with hydroxychloroquine or Plaquenil for lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. It's been extremely safe, so safe that in India they used to put chloroquine in the salt to help prevent malaria.
Wow.
And though it's not got an on-label indication for COVID-19, and really it can't because it takes too long and it costs too much, and there's no money to be made from this generic drug it's cheap, it's been around for a long time. Doctors can legally prescribe off-label. In fact, 20%, 1 in 5 prescriptions, is probably off-label. But all of a sudden, they've clamped down on this and said, well, you can't use it for COVID-19. In Arizona, you can't use it prophylactically at all, or you have to have a diagnosis, verified diagnosis, and sometimes you can't even get a test. And if you get the test, it may take a week to get the results, and the results may be a false negative. And by then, the window of time when the hydroxychloroquine could really have helped you is gone, and you may end up in a ventilator and dead, all because of this obstruction that these governors who are practicing medicine are imposing on physicians and pharmacy boards.
Well, even those governors that raced to legalize marijuana recreationally and medically, it's amazing. It's really amazing. Well, Dr. Orient, is there something you'd like to leave us with today? I would like you to promise to come back and share some updates with us when you have them.
Oh, certainly, I would be glad to come back, but I think that this epidemic may be the most dangerous in history because it's the freedom-stripping virus. We have surrendered our civil liberties almost without a whimper. We have agreed to do all kinds of things that have no evidence base for being effective, but that completely disrupt our ability to carry on daily life. And we are deliberately shutting down discussion of things that could prevent you from getting sick, like vitamin D, or things that could treat you early, or if you're exposed, like hydroxychloroquine. And it is just appalling how many thousands of lives will be lost to the virus or just lost to the disruption in our lives because of this.
Wow. What a blessing to have you and other medical practitioners trying to help us. Trying to keep an eye out for us. Dr. Orient, I want to personally thank you. Thank you for sharing this information with us. And now that you promised to come back, we'll certainly get you back. This has been Just In Case and Dr. Jane Orient. She's been here helping us understand what we do not need is a panic-inspired warping of safety testing. Thanks
exactly.
Thanks for joining us. Additional information and links are provided in this video's Read More. Today's the day to subscribe to this channel. And please remember to support frontline medical practitioners everywhere.